Let's look at 3 further customization options I want to introduce to you. They are switching the rows and columns, that's a quick demo, changing the displayed values from sum to percentage to running total, etc., and then how to position and move a chart. Sometimes you might want to quickly switch for rows and columns or the axes in the legend. Let's have a look at how we do that. Here I've got a clustered column chart and I'm looking at the total sales for each city, and that's split by the size of the product. So what does switching the rows and the columns do for me? From the design tab, I can select the switch row / column button. It basically swaps the series around, so I now have the product size across the x-axis and the city as the legend. Now, that's visually difficult to comprehend. There are too many items in the legend, and this is one of the cases where I might just go and change the chart type and try to visualize that as, say, a 3D column chart. This is a better view when we're looking at a large set of data because it lines everything up in the grid. So I can see all of my coffees on the x-axis and then all of my cities on the z-axis. So it's almost a 3D view, and it allows me to easily see which is the largest coffee sales value, and obviously it's large coffees in New York. Again, if we just switch the row and the columns, then we get the same 3D view. Of course, it's the same data, but this time we have the city along the x-axis and the size along the z-axis. Now, not all chart types are going to be suitable for switching the columns and rows. If I take this pie chart where we're just looking at the split of coffees by whether they were to go or not, does this make sense to switch the row and column? Let's have a look. No, not at all. This doesn't make sense. So if it's not looking right, it's probably because you've not chosen the right chart for the data. Okay, now I want to think about the values we present. I've got this pretty simple column chart just showing the total coffee sales by city with data labels so we can see the actual numbers. At the moment, we're showing the sum of sales. When I originally dragged the price into the values field in the pivot chart fields list, because the price is a numeric field, then the default aggregation for that field is a sum, which is fair enough. However, I could change that aggregation by clicking on the drop-down arrow, selecting Value Field Settings, and choosing a different summarization method. I'm going to choose the average price instead, and I'm going to choose the number format so that we display that to 2 decimal places and select to use the 1000 separator. Notice how the associated pivot table changes too to match the data in the pivot chart. Remember, when you change one, you change the other, and vice versa. Okay, this chart is great, but in data visualization terms, there may be times when I want this scale to start from 0, and I can do that by right-clicking on the axis and choosing Format Axis and changing the minimum bound to 0. Okay, plainly this isn't one of those occasions where you do want it to start from 0. Visually, I'm not able to tell the difference in the heights now because there is only a 3-cent difference between the min and the max averages. So I'll reset the minimum bound. Back to the value field settings, and I'll choose count. This counts the number of rows for me, effectively showing me the number of coffees sold per city. Notice this time the scale does start from 0, but I've now got 2 decimal places, so I can fix that in the value field settings, ensure the 1000 separator is selected, and note that that changes both the data labels and the axis. So raw numbers are great, but using the show values as option in the value field settings, I can display the values as a percentage, a difference from a base value, a running total, or even rank them. I'm going to choose percentage of grand total in the first instance. And now I'll show you what the chart looks like as a running total, which doesn't really make sense in the context of cities. I could choose the percentage difference from, say, Houston, which has the lowest number of sales, and see that Dallas has nearly double the number of sales and New York over 4.5 times more sales. Finally, I could rank them largest to smallest, showing New York in first place and Houston 10th.